we had this barn. We had the horse in the a nice pasture, and the bottom level of the barn was a um,
The stall.
stall.
Horses, yeah.
But the upper level of the barn and beside the stall, on the lower level, was uh, places where I could do my research, my so-called research. And we had a basement that I could work in too. And the upper part of the barn, we had storage, so we had some room, some freedom. And somebody asked us, said, you know, I remember that eraser that you had a few years ago? That was a good eraser. You ought to do something to put that on the market. And he volunteered to join us in an effort to put it on the market. So I started gearing up to figure out how to improve that and get it so that it would be marketable. He disappeared. I mean, he got lost interest real quickly, got interested in other things. But that started me on the road, and I had these areas where I could develop machinery to try to make it put it into production economically, because it was much too expensive to produce. So I started developing machinery to automatically make a brush. Worked on that for a few years. That was around 1970 I started that, and it wasn't until 1980 or so that we incorporated. It's 1979, I guess.
78 it was.
78, that we incorporated with the idea of, well, maybe we can get this on the market satisfactorily. We made a few. Well, anyhow, then we started looking for a place where we could manufacture it, and we got one place that we were kicked out of because it wasn't zoned properly. We got wrong information about that. But then we got the factory, which was this old
Factory.
schoolhouse.
Oh, yes.
A schoolhouse that had been converted to a sewing factory. They made garments, and they made flags, and there was all sorts of sewing machines in there when we bought it. They needed fixing and all that, so I guess they sold off what was really working, but there were all sorts of parts and things. But we were working in setting up that as a factory itself. But then we ran into financial difficulties because that was when the crash happened. It was similar to the crash we had recently. It was a serious economic
It was a recession, but
yeah,
not as bad as this past one.
well, not quite as bad as this one, because it wasn't, not as bad, but it was a pretty sudden one.
Mm-hmm.
And that knocked our credit out and all that kind of stuff. So we lost it took our finances away from buying the house. We had to sell the house and move into the factory. So we divided the factory in half, not quite half, but we took the back part of the factory. We used some of our money from selling the house to get that factory into condition for living in, and
And
so
the
that's
rest
where
went
we
to the
lived
bank.
for another 7 years or something.
Almost 20 years we
Almost.
lived there.
Oh, okay. Almost.
In the factory?
Yeah. Now that was while I was still working for Penwalt Corporation, so I had an income.
That's good.
So I was able to. We paid off the factory so that it was ours virtually, except that it was a 99-year lease, and a good portion of that 99 years was gone by the time we moved out of the factory. We moved out of that because, you tell Rachel, because you're
Well,
the financier.
during those 20 years, in fact, no, I guess it was after we had moved to the factory that we got, I don't know when it was, that we got, somebody else got interested in helping us get financed and so on, but that was before we moved to the factory. But we did incorporate in 78, and we had this person who put in, wanted to take part in the company. He was going to sell the product, and he was going to have a share in the company. Well, there was a little period where we had good success, and then he got discouraged because at one point he brought home enough orders for more erasers than we could make immediately. I mean, you can't just gear up a factory to make 3 times as many as you've been making without a little bit of time lag. And it took us 5 weeks to make the erasers that he had expected to be able to give to customers in 2 weeks. He was thinking we would do like a warehouse where you can just order something and they have it and ship it to you.
His background was sales, not manufacturing.
Not manufacturing at all. So anyway, so he got discouraged and quit. And so then we had to sort of start all over again with a sales program that we could handle. So I started writing letters. We started buying mailing lists and writing letters to the superintendents of schools and principals of schools and various lists like that, picking how many hundreds or thousands we wanted to send out, and learning about how much to expect. You know, like if you send out a mailing to advertise your thing, you can more or less expect 2 or 3% of them to respond. We got pretty good response, about 5 or 6% response. So that began to work, but it wasn't enough to give us an income yet. If we'd been able to grow a little bit faster, we might have made it. But as it was, it took us all that time, about not 20 years, but it took us about 15 years to pull to the place where the eraser was bringing in enough money to pay for all the materials and utilities and everything that went into the eraser, but still not enough to pay us. So we were just at the balance point where any improvement we got from here on, we could maybe make a profit. So then another man got interested in our business. And he decided he wanted to take on sales for us. But then he decided he was interested in finding somebody to buy the business. So he went out and tried to sell the whole business, or make a deal with somebody to distribute for us, find a distributor. And after 2 years of this, we were selling enough erasers because he had brought in some distributors, but he had to adjust the prices down so that we weren't getting as much as we were selling directly to the schools. So then we had to over again bring it up to paying the costs. In the meantime, we're paying for a mortgage on the building. We decided we might as well just close down if we're tired of working on this. But he wanted to continue. So he has the business now, and he's continuing to struggle and repeat practically all the mistakes we made as he learns about manufacturing, because he also was a salesperson. So the business is still creeping along. It may yet make it. But when he got it to the point where he wanted to run 2 shifts in the factory,
Not with us living there.
Not with us living there.